live.
All right, we're live.
I always bring it in too early. I cover up the battle. Chapel Bell joint thing.
No, it's all right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. My name is Nathan Lawrence. This is the Battle Hymnal, everyone's favorite, we'll say, UGA adjacent film breakdown show. We are here today not to break down film, but to talk about everyone's favorite topic, recruiting and recruits. Because today, as you may know, if you are a degenerate who follows this game, is the early signing day, the first day of the early signing day period for college football. So I'm joined by my co-hosts today, Graham Coffey of Dog Sports fame, and also all of your hearts with his steamy, beautiful visage, and Josh Hancher of Dog_Stats fame, and also the king of all of your hearts with that mighty silver fox beard. So, three, we'll say, svelte gentlemen, because you can't see below my shoulders, here to talk to you today about what 18-year-olds are deciding to do with their lives to be free unpaid labor. But now that we've gotten that caveat out of the way, let's talk about how the day went for the Dogs, what we think overall about the class, and we'll get into some the nitty gritty of some class headliners. So, you want to kind of start us up here, Graham?
Yeah. So, I think there's certain people, I think, in the media. I listen to Sirius XM Channel 84 a lot, and I know Mark Packer on there always talks about how he's not a recruiting guy and recruiting doesn't matter, and it's all about what you do with the players when they get on campus. So he's
an idiot. Yeah, he's an idiot. Yeah.
So there's no such thing as a good coach who's a bad recruiter. Recruiting is the lifeblood of any college football program, and
yes,
I just get that out of the way first, because really, what happens today sets the course for the next 3 to 4 years of the program, and the deficiencies in recruiting on the offensive line and a few other spots is what ultimately cost Mark Richt his job, right? So this is important for every coach in the country. Coming into today, Georgia had the number 3 ranked class according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, which I like to use because it takes into account all of the recruiting rankings out there. But yeah, number 3 ranked class. We finished with the number 3 ranked class. There were some kind of headliner players that we were hoping to get today that we did not. Still on the board for us today was Donovan Edwards, a 4-star running back out of Michigan, and Mason Smith, a 5-star defensive tackle out of Houma, Louisiana. As well as there was still kind of a pipe dream that Georgia might sign Corey Foreman. Technically, he hasn't announced yet, but word on the street is that he went to USC. Edwards committed to Michigan, and Mason Smith committed to LSU. Not a real big surprise there. We're in a pandemic, and we haven't been able to have guys on campus for official visits. So this is really the most unique recruiting cycle of all time, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But Georgia did land Xavien Sorey today, 5-star inside linebacker from IMG Academy down in Bradenton, Florida. That's where Nolan Smith came from. Lavassier Carroll, the big running back recruit for the Dogs out of this class, also came from IMG Academy. Shea Patterson, Kellen Mond, a lot of well-known college football players have come from there. Sorey, basically adding him, I think really it's not a stretch or hyperbolic to say that Georgia signed a historically good linebacker class today, and we can kind of break that down a little bit as we go. But Sorey, basically, I think if there was one guy that you would say Georgia really wanted to have or needed to have, I think he would be the guy, just because it was between Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, and keeping him away from those two is definitely positive. 6'3", 215 pounds, elite ball skills. I think we have some tape of him. Do you want to throw it up, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just while he's getting this up, I mean, cornerback was if it's not the number one need of this class, which I think it is, then it's number two easily.
Yeah.
You're probably going to lose at least Stokes, Stevenson. You're losing LeCount. You know, Kamari Lassiter is another guy that we got a little bit lower ranked. We got out of Tuscaloosa over, I think, Auburn.
Xavien
Just
Sorey,
like lots of
6'2" and a
just
half.
a huge need.
I
And you
missed
can
it,
see like Sorey is
213
just
pounds. Man, you started your thing
I mean,
off
he's
with
just
what,
like,
Wildcat?
you know, a 4 or 5 star
Okay.
quarterback commit.
Hey,
he's
I know
got
you
just
had-
about everything you want, right?
Sorey's a
He's
linebacker, but
oh yeah, sorry, linebacker. Sorry.
no,
Um,
no worries. But yeah, I
he-
mean, he's, you know, he was
he-
considered the number one inside linebacker in this class by the time everything was said and done and the final rankings came out. And
I mean,
the
he
dude
can run like crazy.
yeah, I mean, he played running back throughout high school. He is an elite athlete. He was an incredible above the rim dunker as a basketball player at 6'3".
He is a
And-
guy who should not be a liability against wheel routes. Like, if you want to know the actual impact for Georgia's season, it's that the dude is in coverage all the time on tape. He runs really well. He sort of has one of those like safety / linebacker bodies. I mean, he's big enough. He's not an Otis Reese, like he's big enough to play linebacker, but he carries weight well.
the backside pursuit that we just saw on that last play is scary good. But he has excellent length, excellent ball skills. And I mean, really, he's the type of athlete that like he's probably gonna make things happen on the field if you get him on the field. He's played safety, he's played wide receiver, he's played running back. There's some clips in this video we have going right here of him playing a Wildcat quarterback. Here he is returning a kickoff. So I mean, just really the type of guy that like could be a Swiss Army knife. I think with where we are in modern college football, like maybe 10 years ago, he would have played a different position. But I think at this point, having somebody that can come in and play linebacker and both cover running backs and tight ends and the wide receivers, as well as defend the run, like that's where I think a lot of modern defenses break down against modern spread style offenses. So I would be shocked if he didn't, end up as a linebacker for us, but really exciting athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I do want to circle back around. This is a good example of like there is no such thing as outside of the service academies and maybe some very niche jobs where you just need a system fit. In big time P5 football, there's no such thing as an acceptable bad recruiting class.
He just trucked that guy.
I mean, and this is the kind of guy where it's every school that UGA would play in the CFP in the college football playoff has 10 of these guys, and UGA does too. But like you'll hear from like the Auburns of the world or the Tennessees or some people who are having their classes fall apart that we like quote unquote met our needs. And I mean that's just not how college football works anymore. I mean, and you were right when you said earlier that was what cost Mark Richt his job, right? Is a lack of an awareness about how college football works. And yeah, you can find an offensive coordinator anywhere. You can't find a 6'1" dude that's 230 and runs a 4.5 anywhere, because that's what Xavien Sorey is, right? And I think he's a really good example of the kind of guy that we want. So I guess we would say overall, we didn't get any big commitments today. Running into the day, well, other than Sorey, coming into the evening with 20 commits, I think 20 signed.
So we did lose Dejon Warren.
Right.
He was the number one JUCO player in the country, defensive back that I was excited about. I think a lot of people are excited about. I think he would have been a huge help next year with all the guys that are leaving in the secondary because he has played college football already as a JUCO. But he flipped to Jackson State down in Mississippi and is going to play for Deion Sanders. There's a lot of rumors out there about grades and
what I heard is, and I think there are people legitimately reporting this. I don't think this is like a secret. Is that he had some like really bad at-home stuff, and maybe his grades weren't where they needed to be because he had like kind of gone to hell and back this year with some personal stuff that seems like it maybe wasn't his fault. So I don't know for sure, but reading with when people talk about him, they talk about him the way that some people talk about students that I've had, and reading between the lines, it kind of feels like, you know, you're not going to keep the grades that you need to get into UGA if you're like, you've got a bunch of stuff going on at home, which seems like that was maybe the case. You know, good. I'm rooting for him. I mean, I'm not being sarcastic. Like, I want everyone to, all these kids to, you know, use the opportunity to improve their life, and so I hope he does. He would have been a good player for us. I mean, he would have probably started. If not started, he would have been, you know, in the rotation, I think. But
well, I think
good for Dion.
Yeah, and I think going to a school like that, you know, maybe they have some special programs, and you know, Dion certainly wants to coach and I believe be a mentor, you know, too, you know, and so maybe he is in the right spot for him, and there's nothing wrong with that, and he's going to get exposure. So if he's good enough to play on Sundays, and there's, you know, Jackson State can, you know, they'll NFL scouts will come to him. So yeah, I mean, yeah, good for him. I'm glad he didn't go to Alabama or Florida.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to briefly pause what we're doing and just shout out one of my Sousaphones, Yara, who is currently watching this, even though I'm not sure she understands anything about sports or football, but she is just a good and loyal redcoat. So thank you, Yara. Anyway,
we're sorry.
Yeah, we're sorry. We're sorry about everything. We're sorry that this was your exposure to sports, because you really shouldn't start here. This is about the worst part of it. Let's talk about what, I mean, before we get into who is in this class. I mean, I think I do want to address, there is one sort of elephant in the room, which is the one-time transfer rule. If you're not up to stuff on it, this year marks the first year that, or this coming summer will be the first year that college athletes can transfer for one time without any restriction, which means they don't have to sit out a year. They don't have to provide a hardship, you know, an excuse basically that they're transferring. Most of the numbers, you can sign 25 at most. There's an 85 scholarship cap for every football team. Most people think that we're looking at probably 23, 24 spots in this class right now, with 20 signed. I am imagining that UGA is going to hit the transfer market hard right now. And, you know, UGA has lost some like second and third string wide receivers. Jermaine Johnson went back to Minnesota this year or today, one of the outside linebackers. So I'm expecting that whatever disappointment we might have had today in terms of who committed, that there are probably good days ahead in terms of adding talent to this team, just because I've already read some names of people that it looks like UJ is probably pursuing in the transfer market, and I would be shocked if we didn't get 3 or 4 at least.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I have heard a rumor that we are, you know, already kind of talking with a DB that, you know, could be a good replacement for Warren. So, you know, I think everything will work out in the end. Our numbers will probably be where they need to be. And, you know, in this class that was kind of light on stud pass catchers and skill players, Eric Gilbert would be really nice if we could.
Yeah, you've got some guys in this class that I think are maybe a little lower ranked that have some long-term potential. Brock Bauer. Oh, shoot. What's the guy from Phoenix City, the wide receiver?
Hold on.
Shoot. But long story short, while I look for this name, and this is great radio, I mean, I really do think there's some dudes who will develop into really good targets. I think Brock Bauer is a really good tight end. I think this guy whose name is eluding me, and I'm looking it up as we speak because it's driving me up the wall.
I just copied and pasted every SEC player, and
Adonai Mitchell. He's Jonesboro.
Okay.
Adonai Mitchell he's a wide receiver. He was committed to Ole Miss. I think Jonesboro, Tennessee. 6'3", 190. I think he's probably a pretty good developmental prospect. You've got another guy who's coming in from Phoenix City, also as a wide receiver.
Jackson.
Who has had a lot of would probably have been a 5-star or a 4-star if he had not been injured so much. So if he can kind of like nip the injury bug in the bud, I think he also can be pretty special. But you're right. You don't have like the Darnell Washingtons quite in this class.
There's not a Pickens or I mean, just 6'2", 190. He has the body for sure.
And you see guys like, Devonta Smith was a guy who was not at Alabama now, was not quite as low ranked as Adonai Mitchell, but he was just a really smooth athlete he was like a low 4-star, mid 1-star when he came out. So you'll see wide receivers who really develop into something. So it wouldn't shock me to see one of those guys take up, but those are definitely not the headliners. Would you like to talk about our headliners here, Graham?
Yeah, I would. Let's get into it. So we're going to start with a few offensive players and then go into defense. But let's start with Brock Vandagriff, the kind of.
Okay, hold on. Can we pause? Yeah. Somebody apparently has a bunch of Discord notifications going off right now. One of our Discord people just texted me to tell me that. Do y'all both have Discord in streamer mode?
I don't have it.
And I have mine in streamer mode, so it's actually muted. But here, let me just exit out of this. All right.
Sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd be hearing it, though. I don't know why they'd hear it.
Yeah, I don't know what the source is. We are not getting paid for this, and that is very clear. So.
All right, so let's talk about
it. Let's talk about headliners. Hit us with somebody.
Headliner of this class is Brock Vandagriff.
Watch live and local.
Josh has some video he's going to throw on here, but 5-star quarterback, 6'3", 205 pounds, from Bogart, Georgia, right outside of Athens. This dude has a really strong arm. He is surprisingly mobile. He is everything that you want in a modern college quarterback. He's again, I mean, this is in Class A ball, so like I don't expect him to run for 60-yard touchdowns in the SEC. He might once though. There may be a time where I
mean, he's ranked as a dual threat guy. I mean, he can move.
He can definitely move. But the thing that I think is the biggest key about Brock Vandagriff, the thing that I think will translate the most and that Georgia fans should be most excited about is like every blue chip quarterback has a big arm. They have other physical tools that we all drool over as fans, but Vandagriff sees the field in 3 dimensions. And what I mean by that is like he understands how to put a little more on a ball and put it into a tight window. He understands how to put a little bit more arc on a ball and get it in between a linebacker and a safety. He is very much in the way that you watch JT Daniels versus what you saw from Stetson Bennett and DeJuan Mathis, and you see a guy that just has a different understanding of the geometry that exists on a football field. Brock Vandagriff is very similar in that regard. And so I think that's what's exciting, because a lot of guys come out of high school and they have big arms and they're tall and they have nice releases, but that part of the game never really clicks for them, and they never improve and they never really pan out to be big time quarterbacks. And I think that Vandagriff already has elite football IQ. So for me, that's the thing that I'm most excited about. But what do you guys see?
I mean, I don't want to call out DeJuan Mathis, but I think Vandagriff is a really perfect sort of foil to some of the problems that Mathis had. Mathis could throw the ball a mile, right? But he couldn't. I mean, he aimed too much. He didn't have timing. Vandagriff is a guy that he just sort of has a feel for the game. I would say that he has some Aaron Murray-ish qualities. I don't think he's that kind of player. I think he probably has a higher ceiling than Aaron Murray, but he has some sort of just gets the geometry of the football field in a sort of very intuitive way. He's a little bit of a gunslinger. He likes to bomb the ball. He can run a little bit. He seems to be pretty fearless. The thing I really like about him is that he has. I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but what I might even say is like kind of JT Daniels level, sort of just like get the ball out to the guy, different launch angles, out of the pocket, inside of the pocket, on the run, getting tackled. Dude will throw the ball if he thinks he can get it there. He is very much like we've talked about in, I think, the sort of mold of a modern spread quarterback, right? I'm not saying that he is Patrick Mahomes, but he has some Patrick Mahomes-ish qualities to him. Like, just in the term, he's not Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he's going to be like a Pro Bowler. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I hope so, but I have no idea if that's the truth. But he does have sort of like that very like gunslinger, like move the pocket, deliver the ball to the right person, not afraid to throw it downfield, will bomb the ball. And some of that is true, right? He's playing private 1A ball,
Right.
but he's throwing 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, in every game. I think in his last game he like threw for 5, like ran for 3 or something. I mean, he's absolutely lighting up Class A private high schools, which is what he should be doing. And I think you can teach mechanics and footwork and offense. You can even kind of teach a little bit of arm strength, but you can't teach height, you can't teach speed, and you can't teach accuracy. And he has all 3 of those things.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what's going to be interesting is like I watched some of his game last weekend online, streamed it online, where they played the defending Class A champions and beat them 38-0. But he has receivers that are legitimately 5'5". Like I'm not even kidding.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, and he hits them on like in between the numbers. So it's like I can't wait to see what he does with. I mean, he's probably gonna like have to change how much he leads receivers by because he probably has never seen the speed that he'll see when he gets to Georgia. But like, I really am excited for the accuracy that he has because if he can hit 5'5" dudes coming over the middle in tight windows, like he'll have plenty of fun throwing to college wide receivers, especially the ones that Georgia has right now.
I mean, my thought to it was, middle of September or middle October when things were just the sky was falling from the quarterback position and Kirby was getting criticized for not being able to manage a quarterback room. Now it's pretty much solidified if things go the way they're trending. We've got another year of JT Daniels, it appears, and then we've got the next quarterback waiting in the wings. It's not somebody we have on the roster that we're worried about taking over. It's actually timed out really well. So I haven't watched that much Brock Vandagriff, but I am excited that he committed and stayed committed and is the cornerstone of the class and looks like we have a quarterback path going forward. So I think we're looking up, and we weren't looking up at that position just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, big picture, it's definitely key for the long-term security of the program.
Well, I mean, and like you said, Daniels has shown if you have everything else falls into place if you have a quarterback.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The running game will be fine. The defense, it's a lot easier task for them. Like, yeah, 100%. Let's talk about the next headliner on the offensive side of the ball, which I think is Amarius Mims. What better time to sign Amarius Mims as a massive left tackle than when you're bringing in a prize 5-star quarterback like Vandagriff. But I think we've got some video that Josh is pulling up here.
Speaking of a guy that is just absolutely decleaning dudes who are like 170 pounds.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say is like this is the most fun video that we're going to show on this show tonight. So Mims is straight up the best offensive tackle prospect that the state of Georgia has seen since Andrew Thomas. I would include Broderick Jones in that from last year and Tate Ratledge as well. He has a really unique body. He's 6'7", 315 pounds. His dad was like Mr. Universe or a former weightlifter or bodybuilder or something like that. Jeremy's actually friends with the family, but he could be a day one starter on Georgia's offensive line. Like that's not impossible. It could be in vein as like Andrew Thomas when he came in.
Yeah, he is. I mean, I cannot emphasize, and I'm sure if the video's up, which I had to turn
it's comical.
It's just like there are not many dudes who are 315 pounds and not fat.
Right.
And he's not. He's not carrying that weight in the middle. He is he is a freak of nature.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing that's also exciting is like we've talked on the show a lot this year about Monken and Luke and kind of how they like to play offensive line differently than what Sam Pittman did in terms of they want guys with good feet that can pull, that can get to the second level. It's not all just about like girth and size. And he has incredible feet. And the length combined with the feet, like you watch him in some of these clips, he gets downfield really fast. Like that clip right there where he goes and gets the block on the wide receiver screen is just incredible. So I think it really fits what Matt Luke and Todd Monken want to do on offense. And I think that's like the bigger picture here is that we are recruiting a different type of offensive line prospect, I think, than we were under Sam Pittman.
Well, but also, I mean, the continuing Sam Pittman's legacy of just, I mean, it's possible that we're gonna have,
dudes.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have what 2 or 3 new starters on the line next year, maybe 4, depending on how you count who the starters were this year. And it's unlikely that anyone who is not a 5-star plays next year. Like that's wild. Like you're talking, well, I mean, Cedric Van Pran, I think, was a 4-star because he was a center project, but like Cedric Van Pran, who is a center prospect, is probably your lowest ranked 5-star playing or lowest ranked offensive lineman playing at UGA next year. And he was basically the 5-star of centers. He was the highest ranked center that anyone had seen in a long time. And then you're going to have Bradrick Jones. You're going to have Tate Ratledge. You're going to have Amarius Mims. You're going to have, I mean, and the list is
yeah, I mean, like Devin Willock was, I think, the lowest recruited guy that we have in our offensive line room right now. He was a 3-star out of New Jersey, but he's got a massive body. And I've heard a lot of good things about him for the last year or so now. I think another guy in this offense, I mean, since we're talking about the O-line, like another guy to keep an eye on, I think that's a sleeper in this class is Jared Wilson. He's a 3-star guard out of North Carolina. Not that highly rated, but 6'4", 325. You kind of know that someone's probably a little bit underrated if they're a 3-star, and every school in the SEC is offering them, and the Clemsons of the world and all those type of teams are looking at him, and he's one of those guys. So I think he's more of a developmental player. Like I wouldn't expect to see him on the field next year, but I think that we definitely he might make some noise in the years to come. And then, I mean, Micah Morris also signed in this class, 4-star, 10th ranked offensive tackle in the country, number 63 player in the country.
And somehow a sleeper.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a testament.
And I've got the stats up there now. He would have been the highest rated offensive lineman in Tennessee's class. So if I've got that sorted right, but yeah. So I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches,
And this is like I know that a lot of people that watch the show are like hardcore, like let's talk about the difference between like dagger and flood or whatever, football people, and that's fine. But like if you're a person who's just watching this who's not into football or just watches football and isn't into the process, the reason UGA has blown out Auburn and Tennessee recently, when they have blown them out, is because of stuff like this. At one point in the past couple of years, like UGA had more 5-stars than the rest of the SEC East combined.
No, I think there was a point we had where we literally had I think 18 or 20 5-stars on our roster, and there was 2 in the rest of the division.
In the rest of the SEC East, yeah. And so it's like that's how we talk a lot about aggregates and sort of these like heuristics, right? Which is a way of thinking that focuses on practicality. And the biggest heuristic for football, really, for modern college football, is the team with more stars wins. If you look at teams who have won the national championship in the modern era, every one of them has had at least 50% 4 and 5 stars. And generally speaking, the team with the higher average recruiting ranking wins the game. And I mean, and I know that Josh has some metrics on this, and we can get back to individual players in a second. But like, I just want to emphasize to people who don't follow recruiting, the reason this is important is that like there is a direct, like identifiable mathematical correlation between what your average ranking of recruit is coming into your program and whether or not you win the national championship. And you have to have at least 50% elite recruits, 4 and 5 stars, to crack the national championship. Like, and once you're in the club, once you have more than 50%, we call it your blue chip ratio, you can win. right? But I mean, if we look at 2019, the I think Josh has it up here. This is the recruiting average versus the finish in the final
Yeah,
rankings.
I've got some metrics that I can pair with this too, but for now you can just look at the recruiting average. And I mean, I did a big thing back in February, and it's like somewhere around the average recruit in your class or whatever, your roster is made up by the average recruit of 0.908, gets you into sort of playoff quality. Now
so switch that over. That's like to the star ranking. If your average recruit needs to be a 4-star to win the national championship.
Yeah,
basically is what we're saying.
Yeah,
and
it comes out, and we'll show the metrics, and it may not be able to put it in here, so maybe we'll just send it out on Twitter. But it's like, it's not, you have to recruit. It's Jimmys and Joes and the X's and O's, and it's like recruiting leads to it's all related to total EPA and EPA per play, and it's like the teams with the higher rated players have on-field success and these metrics, and sometimes people hate them or don't understand them or whatever. It just goes to show you that the playoff committee, if they're using them or not, they're correlated to how you end up in the playoff ranking.
Well, yeah, and you
depth, right? I mean, like, football is a war of attrition naturally, and teams will wear each other out over the course of games. And like, if you look even as recently as the 2017 national title game, when it came down to the fourth quarter of that game, like, Alabama was running out Najee Harris and Devontae Smith and Tua Tagovailoa. Those were all 5-star true freshmen backups. Yeah, exactly. Backups. And Georgia's front line that year could play with anyone in the country, and they did. But when it came down to the fourth quarter, and maybe, you don't have the guys that are in that second and third wave on your defensive line or in your secondary that you trust or that have the skill, Alabama eventually wore that defense down, especially in the fourth quarter and overtime. And that's kind of how that game was lost. And I think if that exact same scenario plays out with like the depth that Georgia has now on their defense, it's probably a much different story. Like, that's why Georgia gets leads and they hold leads now, is because they continue to throw fresh bodies at you, and their fresh bodies are as good as your starters, but your starters have been playing for 2.5 or 3.5 quarters and they're worn down. So, I mean, I think that's the other part here is like, some of these guys might not ever start for Georgia, which is crazy because they could go 90 to 95% of the schools in college football and start there, but like, they are the reason why you win a national championship. It's not just the headliner guys on the team, it's the cumulative effort and the cumulative effect that your whole roster has.
Yeah, it's not. It's almost cliche to say it, but you're not playing 11 versus 11. You're playing 22 versus 22, and you're almost never going to have your best 11 in the games that count because, like you said, injuries or academic issues or just rotation, right? And on the plays that win you individual games, which win you the championship, you have to have 22 to 25 dudes who can do it. And that's why this matters. That's why Georgia's third string offensive line, offensive tackle matters, because that dude, whoever he is probably going to play in a snap that really, really decides where the season goes for UGA. And if that dude's a 5-star, he's got a decent shot, even as an inexperienced freshman, right? But if he's a 3-star, maybe not. And so and this is a game that comes down to pivotal individual plays. And what you want to do is raise your aggregate talent level to the point where you're going to have somebody in there on the pivotal play that can do the job you need them to do. And that's why all this matters.
Let's check it out.
Let's talk about some more guys.
Yeah. So last offensive guy that we're going to highlight here is Lavassier Carroll. Again, he's also from, fantastic name. Originally from South Georgia, but went to IMG Academy for his senior year and really kind of improved his status as a running back just because he played against a higher tier of competition and like straight up work dudes. But big back, 210 pounds, a little bit more of like a upright kind of Eddie George style runner.
Oh, he's
But
huge.
huge, yeah, very, very like shifty and elusive for a guy his size. Really dominant force, punishing runner. He has a little bit of like a Zamir White style to his frame with thickness and the ability to play at 210 pounds, but still have breakaway speed. Good vision, patient in traffic, and really, again, surprisingly elusive. But I think that, again, it's just like there's the next guy coming in to that Georgia running back class or core running back room. And I think it'll be interesting to see how he develops. He's a good pass catcher. He's got a nice little kind of jump cut move there. Very, very elusive. I mean, like that run right there was absurd. But
Florida wanted
yeah.
him. Florida wanted him bad.
Yeah, Florida wasn't him bad, and we kept him. And what was interesting about that was when he did kind of like reconfirm his commitment to Georgia, he kind of made a comment publicly that was sort of just like, yeah, like why as a running back would I go to Florida over Georgia? So that's always satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but it seems like the sort of traditional thinking is that you don't want your running backs to be too big because they need to have a lower center of gravity, be like sort of closer to a bowling ball than a refrigerator box, kind of, or harder to tackle, more balanced. But I think we're seeing sort of the emergence of a more common emergence of like what you would call like the big back. And I think a lot of that has to do with like dudes are just in better shape now. So a dude Lavassier Carroll size like is still hard to tackle. Like he's not easy to trip even at the size that he is. I just think that's apropos nothing. I just think that in 2000 this guy probably would have gotten moved to like slot receiver or something stupid.
Yeah,
because he was too tall to be running back. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, but yeah, very exciting. One of those dudes someone who UGA plays is going to be really pissed off in the fourth quarter when they're like, they have another one when we put in him as the fourth back, because that's generally how these things work. All right. Who we got next? We go to the defensive side here.
Yep. Let's talk about Smell Mondon. So
it's Smile, right?
It's Smell.
No, really? Okay.
I believe so. Yeah. Smile. I don't know. You have me questioning myself now. But what you should not question is whether or not this dude is a beast, because he is. Look at that ball skills there, dropping back in coverage. Of course, he played running back as well. But 6'3", 220 pounds, out of Paulding County. Probably going to be the next great outside linebacker at Georgia. Pairing this dude with Xavien Sorey in the same class is just absolutely unfair to the rest of the country. He is a huge get. Tennessee wanted him bad, pushed hard. Alabama, Florida, all the other usual names wanted him bad. But really watching this tape, what you see here, exceptional pursuit, excellent get off. I think the thing that's really exciting for us after watching Georgia's linebackers struggle in coverage is he looks very natural in phase when he's in pass coverage, and he looks very natural playing the ball when it gets there and doing it in a way where he's not going to get a 15-yard penalty. So pure playmaker, and also I think we could see him like
there's a lot of offensive clips in here.
There is a lot of offensitive clips in here right now, which kind of sucks.
Well, no, that's I mean, just shows you that he's just a ball player, I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll play the H back.
Hey, that would
he is sort of your
passes. Why not this dude, right?
Yeah, right.
He is sort of your prototypical like outside linebacker who can play every down, like can get into coverage.
Yeah.
I've seen him compared to like Patrick Queen, who was at LSU, who is a nominal outside linebacker, can rush the passer, can set the edge, but he can also fly around like an inside linebacker and cover a wheel route, for instance. You got to feel better about the future of linebackers in coverage at UGA with these two dudes in the fold. It's something that, Monty Rice is a great player, but that's just not his game. Right. Covering dudes on angle routes and tight end seams and all that. Like, that's just not what he does. And so you got to think that with these two dudes that you're your flexibility sort of schematically really increases.
I also really like the fact that he looks almost identical to 21 Savage.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you should check his picture out. It's pretty awesome. Okay. Yeah, and my like early prediction on Smealmanden is that we will see him block a field goal or a punt sometime next year on special teams.
Oh,
Hot
really?
take. That's my big hot take for the show.
Your tight end conspiracy for early next year.
Right, exactly.
Which you were right
Let's
on.
talk about Nolan Green.
Yeah. Watch plays.
Yeah. I'm sorry, miss that. Who are we looking at?
Nyland Green. So Green is a defensive back out of Covington, Georgia, Kirby Smart country down there. He committed a few weeks back, and it kind of came down to Georgia and Clemson for him. But he's a big get for the secondary, especially as we've mentioned already, because that secondary is going to lose a lot to graduation in the NFL. But the Dogs beat out a lot of folks. I mean, he's rated as the second best defensive back in the country. And do we have tape rolling or no?
No, I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
Let me see here.
I'm gonna check you out.
Anyways, but yeah, what you will see on that tape, oh, there it is, is that he has high-level ball skills, ability to track and high point the ball a lot like a wide receiver would in contested situations. He works as a safety some for his high school team too, but he's got good range playing cover two, physical at the line of scrimmage, fluid in man coverage, flips his hips very naturally. He checks all of the boxes that you want a defensive back to check. And he's also just a big guy for a corner. He's kind of I think 24/7 has his player comp as AJ Terrell for the Falcons, which like is sort of that tweener corner linebacker, like Sam linebacker, strong safety kind of body type. But
I'm not sure I got the right play rolling here.
Yeah, you've got a Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, everyone's favorite Lannister player, who I want to talk about here in a minute.
All right, let me. All right, so give me this guy. This is gonna be a disaster here.
Let's just move on to Dawkins.
Yeah.
Nathan, take us away.
I mean, Dawkins is, he's a really good player. He's a very, it's weird because when it comes to defensive tackles, I feel like a lot of times the best defensive tackles don't quite get the hype that they should. We've seen that with Jordan Davis for the past 3 years. He hits hard at the point of attack. My understanding, and I'm not a defensive line guy, but what I've read is that, maybe he's not the most polished guy, hands and technique wise, but he's just a hard to move dude who just throws people around at the level that he plays at. Projects as like a run stuffer immediately. Might have to work to get to become like a consistent pass rush threat. But that's for interior dudes. That's sort of usually the development profile for interior guys, is that if you can stop the run, you can play. And then you can just figure out the pass rush on the way through. I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen, but you're hoping that he's your next Jordan Davis. He's higher rated than Jordan was coming out, but he's got some similar sort of like characteristics, not quite the same body type or anything, but just you'll see in a lot of these, like he does the Jordan Davis thing where he just wins at the snap and the dude in front of him is either knocked back or not moving at the snap. And you can do a lot at the SEC if you can do that at the SEC level. I mean, I think I'm excited about him because like you have to have guys like him.
Right.
Yeah. And Georgia hasn't done that's probably our weakest link recruiting is defensive line,
and I would say to Trey Scott's credit, if you look at sort of it has been, and if you look at sort of post Jordan Davis, like we've been doing good. I mean, Zion Logue, I think is kind of rounding into form. Jalen Carter is a freak. Trayvon Walker is a freak. And I think Trey Scott and Kirby kind of writ large, that was sort of the knock on them before the last few years was, where's the defensive line? Where's the defensive line? One, I don't think defensive line is quite as important as it used to be. I think a lot of what you need are these tweener guys like Nyland Green and sort of dudes who can stand up and run and also rush the passer, like sort of your Xavien Soreys.
Here's your guy. Here's Edward.
Here's Nyland Green, yeah.
Really.
But I think just to finish up on Dawkins, you have to have a guy who can stop the run to run Kirby's defense as it is currently constructed. You just have to have a guy. And it doesn't have to be, he doesn't have to be Terrence Cody. He doesn't have to be Aaron Donald. But you have to have a dude who, like, stops the center at the point of attack. And he doesn't have to throw him into the backfield. But, like, Jordan Davis is going to be a first-day draft pick basically because when the ball is snapped, the dude in front of him doesn't move forward. Like, that's, like, literally that's all he does. And that's not a bad thing. Like, that is his job. And you have to have that guy to make a modern defense work. Well, and so I'm excited.
Yeah, and I mean, with the 3-4 defense, right, like, especially with a younger player like an Ingram Dawkins, and in the system that Georgia has with the linebacking talent that Georgia has, like, his job, right, is to occupy at least two dudes at the line of scrimmage. Like, his job is to occupy the center and one of the guards, and create lanes for the linebackers to either rush the passer through or tackle the running back in the backfield through. So I think he can do that. Like, I think he's enough of an immovable force. And then if he happens to, evolve into a Jordan Davis where he starts to rush the passer some and starts to have like 4 or 5 plays a game where he really disrupts the flow of the offense or the mesh point, then great. That's a bonus. But I think we've got Green on here. His ball skills,
ball hawk, yeah.
And
sort of a Richard LeCount type in that sense, like just like playing wide receiver back there.
He is, but I think and we love Richard. This is a pro Richard show, but I think he's got much better tackling ability than Richard does.
He doesn't tackle with his upper arm.
Yeah, he wraps up really, really well. And I mean, like, that was the thing that stood out to me, and probably why he might end up kind of in that star position is just traditional defensive backs and guys that run as fast as he does don't tackle as well as this dude does. And he's also just got a little bit more size. I mean, his height, he's got a couple inches on what your average defensive back would be considered right now. So yeah, I think
a couple of these guys who are sort of around the what was his name from Clemson? Isaiah Simmons, yeah. Isaiah Simmons, yeah. So one of our Discord guys said that about Sorey. And I do think Xavien Sorey is sort of on the other side of that Simmons thing, where I think Nyland Green is your sort of like, is he a linebacker? Is he a star? Does he play safety kind of guy? And the answer is just sort of yes, because he has, he's not quite a linebacker, but he can play like heavy star or whatever you want to call it. But he has traditional cornerback ball skills and fluidity. So, I mean, yeah, I'm very excited about him.
Yeah. So, yeah, speaking of, we wanted to talk about kind of some of the strongest position hauls. To me, even without Dejon Warren, that defensive back class of 4 commits, you got basically a 5-star in Green, a really high 4-star in Lassiter and David Daniel, and then you've got Javon Bullard as a 3-star defensive back. And I think, again, like guys like Bullard, I think he's a very good player. And, he's rated as the 51st best defensive back in this class. He's not a top 300 guy, a top 100 guy, but at 6 foot, 183 pounds, he has the requisite size and speed that you need to be a good cover corner in the SEC. And I think, like, if you look at the way that Kirby Smart has recruited since he's come to Georgia, yeah, like, we've signed the headlining guys, but it's often been the 3 stars that were kind of forgotten on National Signing Day that turned into All-American forces. I mean, that's what Eric Stokes was, right? Like he was the
Jordan Davis.
Yeah, the last player in the class. I mean, like, Marlon Dean in this class as well, defensive tackle. Again, another IMG Academy guy, but 6'6", 265. Like, he might actually have the speed in the middle of the defense to be a tackle that can be a true pass rush threat. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes when they get on campus. But I think it's exciting, and I think the other unit that we were excited about is just that linebacker class, which we've already kind of touched on. But like, it's just I think it's a historically good linebacker class.
Yeah, we've got my joke about Georgia is that we're always somewhere between ecstatic about recruiting and devastated about play calling. But I feel like it's right there. I mean, we haven't had any drop off.
Oh, just don't.
But
don't.
No. We haven't had any drop off. Kirby is continuing to do what he does, build the program, build it with recruits and depth. And it's just there's no honeymoon. It's continuing on. Just keep chopping. I love it. I mean, it wasn't an exciting day as some of them other have been, but it's loaded, and we're embarrassed with riches, and we should never ever forget what it was like when we were excited to have a number 8 class. And the number 8 class, the difference between a number 8 class and a number 2 or 3, and certainly number 1, is dramatic. It doesn't sound like a lot between 1 and 7, but if you look at the average and the total, it's just like I said. Our last offensive lineman would have been the number 1 offensive lineman in Tennessee's class today. So it's just it matters, and it's logarithmic. It just piles up. I mean, and it's what we got to do. You got to get them.
What I want to say is, you don't talk about. I just want to get ahead of this narrative now and get ahead of this in August and September, right? You don't talk about a perfect game while it's happening. And if you think someone's going to throw a perfect game, you don't say shit about it.
Well,
but yes. I do want to point out something about rankings. If you look at the cumulative points metrics for the ranking tiers this is per the 24/7 composite, which just gives points totals to each member of your class. So right now, Alabama is the number 1 ranked class. They have a total of 319 cumulative points. Ohio State is second at 310. Then you have a drop to UGA at 294. So that's about a 14-point drop between 2 and 3. Then you have LSU is also at 294. Then you have another 12-point drop to Clemson at 282, and then 280 for Oregon, and then another 12-point drop for 268. So like the difference between number 2 and number 3 is about 14 points, right? But the difference between number 3 and number 7 is almost 30 points. So like the difference between our class and Alabama's class is half as the difference between our class and Oklahoma's, for instance, right now, just in terms of aggregate talent rating. And this is a class that fit need. We had to have a good linebacker class. We didn't take an inside linebacker last year. We had to have a good inside linebacker class, and we did. We had to have a good cornerback class, and we did. But also, just if you are in one of those first 2 tiers, right? Because there's sort of like 4 teams and then a big gap. There's 2 teams, there's a gap, then there's 2 more teams, there's a gap, and then there's a giant gap down to everybody else. And if you're not one of those 4 teams, you aren't competing. I mean, there's a significant gap between UGA and Alabama right now, but there was a pretty significant gap between UGA and everybody else last year. And so if you're just in that conversation in one of those top 2 tiers, you can pitch a perfect game, right? And that's what I mean, like, seriously, even with the college football playoff, to win a national championship in this era, you have to basically pitch a perfect game. And what that means is you can't take injuries that derail your season. You can't have a stupid loss to someone you shouldn't. You have to just sort of have everything go right. And the way you do that is you have the best possible players, so when things go wrong, and they will, you still have enough dudes to get you through. And
right. Yeah, and I mean, I think if you throw enough talent at any problem, eventually you'll fix it. That's basically like the common thread of the show, right? Is
that's the core of Kirby's philosophy. I mean, that like literally that is Kirby's coaching philosophy. If you throw money and talent at any problem, you can fix that problem. And now I might have some personal objections to the like sort of capitalism inherent in that philosophy, but it works in college football. Like outside of college football, who knows? But in college football, that is how you win, right? It is the ultimate zero-sum game, and recruiting is a zero-sum game, right?
Yeah,
like every dude that we getting Xavien Sorey today made Florida worse.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
Exactly, and we've heard, and the Florida people and Florida fans have been saying the gap's closing, and Blutarski always talks about it, and the gap widened. It didn't get any closer. We did not have Florida gain on us, and we are the co-East champions, and we have a higher ranking, and things are looking up. So it's always
I mean, like the gap this year, Georgia has 4 5-stars, 11 4-stars, 5 3-stars. Florida has 1 5-star, 14 4-stars, 11 3-stars. There is a 27-point gap between Georgia and Florida on the recruiting trail right now, and that's from number 3 to number 8. Those five ranks are not equally distributed.
They got that Clemson running back transfer that didn't count into those stats, but yeah, I mean, still.
But UGA is going to have 2. I mean, we're probably going to get that cornerback from Michigan State or whatever. UGA is going to have 2 or 3 4-stars or 5-star equivalents coming in as dudes on the transfer market, right? And so,
Graham, you got anything else? We got to wrap it up. Been on here an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing I would say is that I think we as a fan base have been really spoiled by how Kirby Smart has recruited over the last 4 years. This is going to be the 5th year in a row that Georgia has a top 3 class. And, last year they were number 1. They were number 1 2 out of the last 3 years. And I think because we maybe didn't hit on a couple guys that we could have this afternoon, or that folks thought we were in the running for, there was a little bit of like negativity on Twitter and in other places. And like, I think that's absurd. Like, don't be, I want us to have every good player we can have. So don't get me wrong, but it's like, this staff has done a phenomenal job in a pandemic year of putting this class together, because in a season like this, all you really have to go off is, your word and Zoom calls and what your culture is. And hopefully the guys that you have on your team that you're putting in touch with some of these recruits are saying good things about your program. And this class like really looked, I mean, our theme here is that like, we're always like, never question Kirby Smart in recruiting because he always comes through. But there was a lot of work still needed to be done on this class a few months ago. And like, this class closed really, really strong. And so I think it's a credit to Smart and the entire staff that they were able to come home with the number 3 class. Because if you look back at signing day last year, and guys like Darnell Washington and Kendall Milton and some of these guys that we brought from way across the country, what a lot of them said was that they came to Georgia because of the environment that they saw at the Notre Dame game in 2019 and how that stuck with them and how incredible that atmosphere was. And we didn't get to bring anybody on campus this year. There was no official visits. There was no packed houses. There was
in one home game in the last 9 weeks. Like that's
the season.
Yeah, having the number 1 class or having a top 3 class, there's a huge difference between top 3 and top 5. And having a top 3 class when you have basically no on-campus visits, you don't have it's actually sort of a master class. Like seriously, like Ohio State and Alabama are having special years, but a lot of the hay was in the barn for them almost pre-pandemic. Like they got a lot of work done in January and February, and Kirby didn't. Like he sealed a lot of these dudes late, and it'll be interesting to see. Finish your thought. I'm sorry. I have one more thought before we get out of here.
No, you're good. I mean, I think, the 22 class is off to a good start, but I think you saw LSU, despite the season they had this year, they signed the number 4 class, and that's because a lot of these kids, their recruitment heats up their junior year. They really start paying attention their junior year, and a lot of them, they decide where they're going to school before they ever get to their senior season of football. And so with how Georgia closed this year, I think that, there should be a lot of positive recruiting momentum for 2022. And this was a very defensive heavy class. And I expect the 22 class to always have defense because this is Kirby Smart. But I think we should see some pass catchers and some skill guys that should be really exciting.
Yeah. My last thought is Kirby explicitly said in his press conference today, well, he didn't say this explicitly, but he got as close as Kirby is to ever being explicit in saying that he intentionally took fewer dudes to have flexibility to fill this roster back up with transfers. And so it'll be really interesting to see, I think, after we get some of these NFL decisions from these guys, these juniors especially, you're going to see some more movement. And I think that was an intentional strategy. And Kirby was one of the guys who really feasted on the first early signing day. If you remember, that I'm pretty sure it was the Eason class was the first real early signing day, and Kirby cleaned up on it. And he has traditionally been a guy who is right at the bleeding edge of what you can do recruiting legally, and maybe a little rule fudgy, right? So if you give Kirby a clear announcement of like, you can do this new thing, he will be the first person to do it. So I'm really interested to see strategically, tactically, how he wants to fill this class back up and what kinds of changes he can make to the roster with the new flexibility of the one-time transfer rule.
Yeah. One thought I do want to add real quick. Sorry.
Yeah,
16 of the 20 guys that signed today are going to enroll early. And what's exciting about that is like these guys are going to have a spring practice with Todd Monken and Matt Luke. At the same time, yeah, and no, no one on the team has had that before, so it'll be interesting to see if because of that, some of these younger players maybe emerge a little more than we traditionally see, because Georgia's got to play Clemson in 8 months, and
September 4th,
yeah, and they're going to want to have everybody out there that they think can help them win that game. So,
absolutely. This has been the Battle Hymnal. We loved having you out here. Any last thoughts, Josh, Graham, before we get out?
Thanks for we had some technical issues, but I think we gave you guys a lot of info. So, and then we're going to tweet some of these graphs out. So if they couldn't read them and stuff, Nathan will tweet them out from the Battle Hymnal or the Chapel Bell Curve account.
Well, yeah, absolutely, I will. So thank you so much for being here. We care so deeply about all of you. We hope that you have a great holiday season. If we don't see you before then, for our friends celebrating Hanukkah right now, or who just finished Hanukkah, I want to say, I should have looked that up. Happy holidays to everyone, regardless of how you were celebrating. We hope that you are safe. We hope that you make good decisions in this time of a lot of uncertainty. We have had a really great year here at Chapel Bell Curve / the Battle Hymnal under some pretty horrible experiences. We want to say to all our Discord users and our little community that we made over there that we love all of you guys. And we love all of our listeners, regardless of how they sort of interface with the show. It's been a source. I think I can speak for all 4 of us when I say it's been a source of really great solace in a year that's kind of sucked in a lot of ways for a lot of people. So this is sort of a stupid thing we're doing, but we think it makes some people happier, and we hope that we've made your day a little better here every time that you listen to it. So happy holidays. Be safe. We will be back soon with further tomfoolery. Honestly, the next thing you see on this channel will probably be Justin and I playing video games. So until then, if you like what you heard today, you can find me at Nathan J. Lawrence. You can find my podcast and sister, publication to this, the Chapel Bell Curve, wherever you find podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. I'm joined today, as always, by Josh Hanser, our intrepid producer, at dog_stats on Twitter, the place to go for dog statistics and sort of just good data aggregation. I'm also joined today by Graham Coffey, who writes a shocking amount of copy for dog sports and does not get paid enough to do it. Just wilderness guide extraordinaire. This man will kill a bear with his bare hands. Trust me. Anyway, if you liked what you heard here today, give us a follow. give us a rating on our podcast feed. And if you really like what you heard, you can check us out at patreon.com/Chapel Bell Curve. You throw us a couple bucks, get access to all of these stats, all of these graphics, our Discord feed, just about everything you could need to be a well-informed dog fan, and you can join a great community. So we will catch you in Parts Unknown, the Classic City, wherever it is that you lay your little dog head. But until next time, go dogs.
Go dogs.
Good dogs.